The story kicks off with our hero Jang Tae-ho squatting in a super weird-looking field. He's breaking out in a cold sweat, thinking this whole thing feels off. On top of that, there's a hoe stuck in the ground, and he thinks the whole situation is ridiculous. Our boy complains that they sent him to pull weeds with just this one tool. Then he reveals he was kidnapped and taken to the countryside, which is just insane. Apparently Jang Tae-ho is supposed to be stuck in this place for 30 days, but he's already checked out. Despite all that, the big question on his mind is why any of this is happening. Suddenly, our protagonist hears a voice calling him, "Young Master." And when he looks to the side, he sees a totally bizarre scene involving a lawnmower. A little girl is about to get hit and yells for Jang Tae-ho to get out of the way. Our hero is completely clueless about what's going on. A moment later, he makes a face like he's about to be sick from the whole situation. Then he starts screaming his head off, all because of a tiny little beam. But to understand all this craziness, we need to go back 2 days in the past. So we see Jang Tae-ho in his bed while someone calls him by his name, Jang Tae-ho. Still in bed, Jang Tae-ho's mom shakes him to wake him up and tells him to get up, but he asks for 5 more minutes. She seems surprised by his request, noticing something different about his face. Then she spots a bandage on Jang Tae-ho's nose, which makes her a little curious. Jang Tae-ho tries to hide under the covers, saying she doesn't need to know, but she insists. Furious, Jang Tae-ho's mom repeats his words, "Doesn't need to know," showing her disappointment in him. Still clinging to the blanket, he tries to fight off her curiosity. With a swift move, she yanks the blanket off in surprise, exposing Jang Tae-ho's face. Now sitting up, Jang Tae-ho touches the bandage on his nose while she asks what happened. The camera focuses on Jang Tae-ho's nervous face as his mom says, "No wonder you snuck in this morning." Then she grabs him and asks if he got into fights again, just like in middle school. Jang Tae-ho's mom gets furious, yelling about his disrespect while trying to talk to her son. Jang Tae-ho peeks from behind the door and says he didn't fight, denying it as well. Now dressed, our boy touches his nose and says he just fell and got hurt, that's all. Jang Tae-ho tells his mom he's going to be late again today, and she asks what he's been up to. She asks if he's eaten yet, and from the doorway, he replies that he'll eat on his own. Taeho's mom gets worried and wonders if he's causing trouble again. Then she tells her husband that their son's nose was broken, and he can't believe it. She gets a headache just thinking about having to apologize for him again. On top of that, she complains that our hero isn't well, behaved like his brother. Suddenly, the dad's phone starts ringing with a call from Jang Mi-a. Our boy's dad is surprised and wonders why she would call out of the blue. He answers the call, and his wife curiously watches the conversation. On the other end of the line, the woman talks about our protagonist's last day of school. The father then explains that Tae-ho is stubborn and that they need to catch him by surprise. He then confirms that they will pack our boy's bags and send them over. As soon as the call ends, our hero's mom asks what the woman said. The father then turns to her and suggests sending Jang Tae-ho to the countryside. His wife is completely shocked by her husband's sudden idea. The scene then cuts to Namchin Industrial High School, where our hero studies, and we see our protagonist playing on his phone while grumbling in anger. In the classroom, a boy named Kim Jae-hyun complains about a video he's watching. A classmate asks if he's watching boxing, and Jae-hyun says the fighter is terrible. His friend calls him out for showing off, but Jae-hyun just brags that he landed a hit on Tae-ho yesterday. However, the classmate points out he only hit his nose, but Jae-hyun claims he went easy on him. At that moment, our protagonist shows up and tells the two of them to get out of his seat. Jae-hyun then provokes our hero and makes fun of his injured nose. Jang Tae-ho gets annoyed by the teasing and threatens to kick the bully's face in, but the kid just keeps laughing and repeats our protagonist's threat in a joking tone. Having lost all his patience, our hero lands a solid punch right in Jae-hyun's mouth. He then grabs the guy's face and asks if he wants to get his lips busted. With a sinister smile, Jang Tae-ho says he's only talking for a specific reason, because he doesn't have the money to pay for Jae-hyun's hospital bills. He warns the bully to keep his mouth shut, but someone yells, asking what's going on. Suddenly, their teacher appears at the door, looking not too happy. Our protagonist gets startled and ends up letting go of the other boy's face. Jang Tae-ho's teacher stares him down with his arms crossed and asks what he thinks he's doing. Our protagonist tries to explain, saying that Kim Jae-hyun provoked him first. On top of that, the teacher figures out that our boy's broken nose has something to do with the fight. Then he gives our hero a lecture, telling him he's not a kid anymore. Right after the scolding, Jang Tae-ho leaves the school and leans against a wall, super annoyed. He complains that Kim Jae-hyun is desperate to pick a fight with him, and also that his mom and his teacher are just on his case all the time. So, our protagonist decides to head to a gaming cafe to blow off some steam. But on the way, he's stopped by a group of very suspicious-looking men in suits. The leader of the group asks if he is young Master Jang Tae-ho. Our hero confirms it but asks who they are and what they want with him. The man then explains that our boy's aunt sent them to pick him up. Jang Tae-ho is confused because he hasn't seen his aunt since elementary school. He starts to think that these men are actually Kim Jae-hyun's goons, because the bully always bragged in class that he knew a lot of gangsters. Our hero realizes that with 3 guys there, they're not going to let him walk away easily. Therefore, he clenches his fist, already preparing for the only way out he sees. So our protagonist just bolts, yelling that they've got the wrong person. The group's leader then gets furious and orders his henchmen to capture our boy, and so begins an intense chase through the city's alleyways. Our protagonist runs incredibly fast while thinking about some kind of turn. He believes that if he can get out of there, he can easily lose them. But just as he turns the corner, a giant truck appears in front of him. Jang Tae-ho is completely frozen, with no way to dodge the vehicle. At the last second, one of the men in suits throws himself to save our hero. Our boy is pushed to safety and looks up in shock. The man who saved him is lying on the ground while the others watch the scene. One of the henchmen is relieved, but the other gets annoyed with the situation. Shortly after, the boss picks up our protagonist, who is bleeding and unconscious, and he says he just stopped the kid from going to the great beyond, and now he's passed out. The henchmen decide it's best to take our hero while he's out cold. A while later, Jang Tae-ho seems to be waking up in a strange place. In his mind, he hears the sound of a moving car and doesn't understand anything. Soon after, he realizes the car has finally stopped moving. Then our boy feels like he's being carried by someone and wonders who it is. Still a bit groggy, he tries to figure out what's happening around him. Desperate in his thoughts, he starts calling out for someone to help, and he gets a quick glimpse of a person carrying him on their back. Suddenly, our protagonist wakes up with a jolt, all bandaged up. He sits up in bed and looks around, wondering where the heck he is. But he soon recognizes the room as the one from his grandmother's house and gets confused. At that moment, a toy gun is pointed right at his head, and a little girl with a sinister smile asks if he really is Jang Tae-ho. She stares at him with a very weird look and a grin from ear to ear. Our hero is completely frozen, having no idea who this girl is. In the room, the little girl asks our protagonist if he is Jang Tae-ho. Jang Tae-ho confirms his identity and immediately wants to know who the heck she is. With a smile on her face, the girl proudly introduces herself as Minju. On top of that, she says that from now on, she's his boss, and we find out she's his cousin. Our hero thinks this is a load of crap and that the girl is nuts. But Minju's expression completely changes when she hears what he said. Our protagonist then feels a chill down his spine and realizes the danger he's in, because the little girl pulls out a toy gun and points it straight at his head. Right after firing, she asks if he still thinks it's a load of crap. Jang Tae-ho is terrified and wonders if that gun is real, so our boy tries to run away from her, screaming in fear around the room. However, while trying to escape, he ends up bumping into his grandmother at the door. The old lady then asks why he's making so much noise first thing in the morning. Our protagonist points at the girl and says she's crazy for walking around with a gun. But his grandmother calmly explains that's Ju, his aunt's daughter. Suddenly, Jang Tae-ho remembers when his cousin Ju, I was just a baby 6 years ago. His grandmother then explains that the little girl grew up a lot while he was skipping family parties. But our hero is still confused and wonders why he's even there in the first place. Ju reveals that she kidnapped him to be her subordinate in her mom's business. Furthermore, she says it's time to stop borrowing her mom's henchmen. Our boy doesn't understand a thing and thinks she must be playing some kind of mafia game. In the midst of all that confusion, our protagonist's cell phone starts to ring. He quickly grabs the phone to try and call his mom for help. Desperate, our hero yells into the phone, asking his mom to save him. But it's actually his brother on the other end of the line with a smug look on his face. His brother asks if he's having fun and says his job is to keep her company. He also says that Ju hadn't been to the countryside in a while, so he should take care of her, and that they hope taking care of his cousin will help him mature a bit. And so, our protagonist understands that the whole thing was just a plan by his family, because Ju's parents were traveling and he was chosen to be the girl's babysitter. Jang Tae-ho's parents already figured he would try to escape, so they blocked everything, and he was sent straight to where Minju was waiting for her next victim. Thus, his cousin declares him her subordinate, and that from this day on, he will serve her. But our hero refuses to accept this madness and tries to escape by jumping the gate. He just can't believe that all of this is actually happening, because being a babysitter for a crazy girl with no computer and a gun was just too much. Desperate, our protagonist runs for the gate and says he's going to escape barefoot. However, he gets caught by a rope and ends up falling to the ground with no chance of escape. Then he's tied up and dragged back by a very serious-looking woman in a suit. The woman warns him that he's not going anywhere and that he must stay by the young lady's side. And we find out she is Ryo Seolha Minju as personal bodyguard. Our boy is tied up on the floor, not understanding what's going on. Then, a term is revealed that means the power of 1,000 troops and 10,000 horses. This phrase used to symbolize Ju's mother, the fearsome Jiang Maye, because before she got married, she was a legend and faced hundreds of gangsters all by herself. Even Min Du-ho, the boss of the White Tiger Gang, bowed to her power. The guy even went as far as offering his own position as boss to the woman. And with Jiang Mi in charge, the gang became a fortress in the city. Back in the present, our hero is sitting down, processing everything he's heard. He then finally understands that his aunt is a gangster and this is her territory. But Seol Hoa corrects him, saying she's been out of the game for 7 years. Our boy freaks out and accuses the bodyguard of acting like a criminal. However, little Ju tells him to stop whining, and our hero gets annoyed. He stays silent but with a look on his face like he's about to explode at any moment. Then Seol Ho draws a sword and warns him not to underestimate the young lady. With the blade at his neck, our boy gets terrified and starts to cry. But Ju tells her bodyguard to stop and to cut the rookie some slack. Seol Ho obeys the order instantly and sheathes her sword. She then says he should be grateful for the little girl's generosity. In the end, our hero just sits there defeated, wanting to go home already. Ju tells our hero to stop standing around like a zombie and get ready. With an evil smile, she announces that they're going to make a collection run in the territory. Our boy complains about having to follow her but is corrected to call her boss. So they arrive at a place where some elderly people are playing games calmly. The little girl approaches and calls them Helders, leaving the old folks confused. She questions them for being so relaxed in her mother's territory, and with a smile on her face, she asks if they've prepared the protection fee. Our protagonist is shocked by the girl's audacity to extort elderly people. With a smirk, he thinks she's going to get in big trouble for this attitude. But the old folks recognize her and are happy to see how much she's grown. Our hero is completely confused by the unexpected reaction from the elders. In the end, Ju leaves with a bunch of money and snacks in her hands. Satisfied, she says to head to the next spot, and our boy doesn't get it at all. So she continues her collection rounds through the neighborhood with her bodyguard. At the end of the day, they return with a ton of gifts, food, and drinks. Our hero still can't believe that people hand over their money so easily. He thinks his aunt was a gangster and probably robbed everyone there. But Seol Ho explains that it was actually the complete opposite of what he thinks, because his aunt fought alone from the beginning to protect that town. And that's why everyone adores her daughter, because she's the daughter of their savior. Our protagonist is in shock as he realizes the stories about the axe were real. Suddenly, a boy approaches and asks if he is Ju's older brother. Our hero then explains that he's just her cousin, and the boy is thrilled. The kid then offers our protagonist some money as a gift. Our boy tries to refuse, but his hands move on their own to take the money. But before he can grab the cash, his cousin shows up and snatches it first. Ju takes the money for herself, and the boy gets scared by her appearance. She says the boss isn't even done with collections, and he's already trying to skim off the top. Our protagonist is outraged and yells that this makes no sense at all. Suddenly, Seol Ho appears behind him with a gun and says she found him. With a gun pointed at his head, our protagonist complains about the overreaction. The bodyguard tells him to shut up and grab his things to go with her. In a moment of desperation, our hero screams that he hates his parents with all his might. Meanwhile, his brother at home feels a shiver and says he's feeling great. Back in the countryside, our boy is exhausted from carrying so many bags. But when he checks his phone, he sees a notification that really intrigues him. It's for a login event in his favorite game with free items. He complains about not having a computer in the middle of nowhere to take advantage of it. However, he's surprised to see a sign for a gaming cafe right in front of him. Excited, our protagonist calls his cousin by her name, but she gives him a serious look. So he corrects himself and calls her boss, as she had ordered before. With a mischievous grin, our hero asks if he can make a quick stop at the bathroom. Ju looks at him suspiciously but ends up agreeing to the request. He promises to be quick and runs off towards his real objective. Seol Hwa asks if it's safe to let him go, and Ju says he'll be back. Our hero then stomps his foot on the ground and begins his grand escape. And he takes off running, yelling that they're a bunch of suckers. On top of that, he says they can do the collection run by themselves because he's going to play games. With a grin from ear to ear, our boy yells that he's going to play video games. But when he goes inside, he finds a bizarre scene with some very sketchy guys. Our protagonist quickly realizes he's walked into some serious trouble, because a man is on the floor, all beaten up and in a bad way. Our boy then turns pale with fear and thinks he's completely screwed. He panics and wonders why there are no computers but instead a body lying there. Suddenly, one of the men turns around and asks who he is and what he's doing there. Our hero stammers and says he thought the place was a gaming cafe. However, the guy explains that it used to be, but now they use the place as a warehouse. Our boy tries to play it cool and says he gets it, but he's already on his way out. So he says he had no idea and just walked in by mistake, so he'll be leaving now. But before he can leave, one of the men grabs him by the neck, hard. The man with the eye patch holds him and tells our boy to wait a minute. Jang Tae-ho then starts sweating bullets because he knows he can't leave after seeing this mess. The guy even complains that he should be helping and that kids these days are so selfish. He then grabs our protagonist's arm and pulls him closer. Our hero tries to argue, but it's too late for any excuses. With a powerful stomp on the ground, our boy is taken down with no chance to react. He then falls to the floor right next to the guy who was beaten up by the men. Our protagonist is terrified when he sees the state of the man lying on the ground. The boss asks if he ate something bad because he can't stop shaking with fear. He then throws a pair of gloves on the floor and says they are the tools for the job. With a creepy smile, he tells our hero to clean up all the red stains. The other guy thinks it's perfect because they were having trouble cleaning everything up. Then they start discussing what to do with the body so it doesn't attract attention. One of them suggests burying the guy in secret since he caused the problem himself. Jang Tae-ho looks at the body and wonders if he'll meet the same fate if he makes a mistake. Our protagonist tries to calm himself down while thinking of a way to get out of there, because he knows that if he helps, his life will go straight to heck. He also realizes the guys want to make him an accomplice to silence him, so our hero needs a plan to escape because calling the police isn't an option. Suddenly, he gets a brilliant idea as he looks at the only light in the place. He realizes he can throw his cell phone at the light bulb to create a distraction. Our boy knows it's risky, but it's his only chance to survive this. But before he can act, one of the men offers him a cloth to start cleaning. At that exact moment, our protagonist plants his feet firmly on the ground and gets ready. He then stands up and throws his cell phone with all his might towards the light. Suddenly, an old man appears at the door and storms into the warehouse. The man yells at the guys and calls them every name in the book. Our hero drops to the floor to protect himself from the chaos that just erupted. The old man picks up the cell phone and complains that they're still doing this stuff here. With fury in his eyes, he yells that he had already warned them to stop. The cell phone our hero threw hits the old man square in the face. The man then screams in pain while the other two guys look on in horror. Right after, the old man collapses to the floor, and the cell phone bounces away. One of the henchmen panics and yells out for his dad, leaving our boy confused, because our protagonist doesn't understand this weird family relationship at all. But he realizes this is his big chance to finally get out of there. However, when our hero tries to run, someone grabs his foot with incredible strength. He looks down, completely shocked by what's happening, because the guy who was on the floor is holding him and asking what he did to his dad. With a furious look, the man who seemed out cold gets up and glares at our boy. Suddenly, a scream echoes, and the scene changes completely, and we see our protagonist waking up from a nightmare, totally spooked. He coughs a lot while his cousin and the bodyguard look on, confused. Ju then scolds him for trying to run away and approaches with an annoyed look. But our hero is relieved to realize he didn't pass away and it was all a dream. But before he could celebrate, Ju lands a punch right in his face. She says that him talking nonsense as soon as he wakes up makes her want to hit him. Suddenly, his cousin turns around and tells the guys he saw in his dream to apologize. They all bow and apologize at the same time to the young master. Our hero is completely confused and asks why they are there. Ju explains that they are her mother's subordinates and are there on business. She then points to one of them and tells him to explain the whole situation. The henchman says they came to help move her father's belongings. While they were helping carry a syrup bottle to the warehouse, an accident happened. He stepped on a piece of paper and fell backward in a very clumsy way. The bottle he was holding fell on his head and broke instantly. And with the impact, he ended up passing out and creating that whole mess. In the end, the men apologize for being rude without knowing who he was. Our protagonist then understands why the whole thing looked like a crime scene, and he remembers the old man who was hit by the cell phone during the confusion. The old man reveals himself to be Jang Chung-dong, our hero's grandfather, and calls him a brat. On top of that, he gets furious and scolds Jang Tae-ho for throwing the phone at his face. Our boy tries to apologize, but as punishment, he'll have to help out on the farm tomorrow. Jang Tae-ho is outraged by the punishment and his cousin Ju just watches everything silently. The little girl then asks her grandfather if she can come along to supervise her subordinate. The old man looks at his granddaughter with a serious expression and stays silent for a moment. But suddenly, he picks her up in his arms, all happy, and says she's very thoughtful. The grandfather is completely smitten with the girl, and our hero watches the scene with jealousy. With a clenched fist, our protagonist calls out to his grandfather with a teary face, because he remembers that not even as a child did he receive that much affection from his grandfather. Defeated, our hero gets depressed in the corner while Ju watches him from the side. Shortly after, the little girl approaches and hands a mysterious envelope to Jang Tae-ho. He then asks what it is, and she replies that it's payment for his efforts. She says that even though he slacked off, he helped at the collection run, and that's why he earned it. Our boy then thinks she's cooler than she seemed and that she's giving him his money back. Opening the envelope, our hero finds a check for 1,000,000 won. Completely shocked, he bows to Ju-ah and promises to serve her forever. The little girl is satisfied since his attitude changed in a heartbeat with the cash. And that's why he was on the farm after earning 1,000,000 won. So he just quietly pulled the weeds, having accepted his fate. Suddenly, he hears the same little girl yelling Jang Tae-ho's name. She was heading his way at top speed, yelling for him to get out of there. Our hero is terrified and tries to tell her to wait a second. But there's no time to do anything, and a huge explosion goes off on the spot. The girl is thrown a long way by the impact and lands on the ground, unresponsive. Our protagonist is shocked and thinks the situation just got legendary. He is also thrown backward and hits the ground, feeling a lot of pain. Lying on the ground, he thinks this is all insane and doesn't understand the scene. The other guy is also on the ground and looks like he's about to pass out from the pain. To make matters worse, Ju-ah lands on top of him, and our hero is left breathless and out cold. Our protagonist yells at the girl and asks how she can even drive that thing. But Ju-ah tells him to shut up and says the machine just broke down out of nowhere. Suddenly, the other guy shows up and asks if the young lady is all right. However, the bodyguard says not to worry because our hero broke her fall. He thanks our protagonist but Jang Tae, who says it wasn't on purpose. Shortly after, the grandfather appears and asks what all the commotion is about. Ju-ah apologizes and explains that the lawnmower suddenly broke. The old man says the machine was already busted and asks if she's okay. Then the girl asks if they can do something else, because she's getting heat stroke. Our hero then says she eats like a horse and passes out after an hour. The grandfather then tells the three of them to clean up the mess and follow him somewhere else. The bodyguard seems excited about the new task, and her eyes light up. He takes them to a vegetable garden full of ripe tomatoes and eggplants. The grandfather explains that they need to pick the vegetables for grandma's dinner. Finally, he says he's going to fix the machine, and our hero thinks this task is much better. Ju-ah is mesmerized when she sees the ripe, shiny tomatoes in the garden. She then asks her bodyguard if she should use the scissors to pick them. Excited, the little girl cuts the first tomato and Seal-ho praises her work. She says it's an important mission and invites our hero to come pick some too. Our protagonist then asks why she's only polite to their grandfather. Ju-ah explains that he's her mother's father, and therefore he deserves respect. Our boy finally gets her logic and thinks his family is pretty weird. Despite that, he thinks being in the countryside is actually pretty peaceful after all this time. But he gets annoyed when he remembers he's being bossed around by his younger cousin. Suddenly, our hero remembers a huge fight he had with his relatives 4 years ago, and he wonders why his grandfather hasn't chewed him out for it yet. In the end, he decides to let it go because if Grandpa hasn't said anything, it's a win. He just hopes things stay as calm and quiet as they are now. But when he turns his head, he comes face to face with a very friendly-looking spider. Our protagonist screams in terror, and the two girls look over, completely confused. Our hero points at the spider and screams desperately, scared of the bug. But Ju-ah just stares at him, bored, and thinks he's overreacting for nothing. Then she simply gives the spider a flick and sends it flying. With a triumphant smile, the little girl asks if he's satisfied now. Suddenly, our protagonist looks at Ju-ah's back and sees something strange. He screams for her to stop and his face turns pale with fear, because he warns her that there's a huge centipede right on the girl's back. But the bodyguard So-hwa acts fast and grabs the insect with her bare hands. She says she got it and that he can relax, but our hero tells her to throw it away. Our protagonist almost faints from the scare and thanks Seal-hwa for her help. Ju-ah then asks if she isn't afraid of bugs and is impressed. Our hero is also surprised because she picked up the creature with her bare hands. The bodyguard explains that she's from the city and is already used to insects. After all the commotion, they decide to continue harvesting the vegetables. Suddenly, our hero's grandfather returns from fixing the lawnmower. Our hero's grandfather asks his wife where the city boy is. The grandmother is worried about him being alone, but her husband says she's overreacting. The grandfather then says he'll be fine because he's a city boy. Besides, he says that picking a few vegetables isn't that hard of a task. Suddenly, the grandmother gets confused and asks if her husband remembers something, because the grandfather remembers there was a wasp nest near the garden, and he starts to wonder if they might have disturbed the nest by accident. Back in the garden, the three of them manage to pick a full basket of vegetables. Our protagonist celebrates excitedly because they've finally finished the task. Ju-ah then offers to carry the basket, but our hero tries to stop her. The little girl then gives him a serious, determined look, set on carrying it. Our boy doesn't understand her obsession with those silly vegetables. He then decides to go wash his face in the stream because he's so hot. Ju-ah and Seal-ho decide to go with him to cool off too. So the three of them walk together, and our protagonist complains about the intense heat. Our protagonist carries the basket of vegetables and complains about the intense heat. Desperate for some water, he hurries to get to the stream. But halfway there he stops suddenly and is frozen in fear. Jua, who is right behind him, asks what's wrong. Suddenly, he grabs her and throws her onto his back in one swift move. The bodyguard Seal Hua watches the scene from a distance, not understanding anything. She starts to ask what's happening, but it's too late. A swarm of angry wasps starts stinging her arm without mercy. In an instant, our hero hugs Ju and shields her with his body. He then screams desperately that they're toast because he stepped on a wasp nest. Suddenly, a giant wasp appears and threatens that they are all done for. Without a second thought, our hero grabs both girls and makes a run for it. Seal Han notices her wrist has been stung but ignores the pain for the moment. She pulls out 2 knives and prepares to fight the swarm of wasps. With a determined look, she positions herself in front of them to protect them. Our hero yells at Seal Ho and asks what she's trying to do, but the bodyguard says that anything that harms the young lady will be eliminated. With incredible speed, she slices all the wasps to bits in mid-air. After finishing off the swarm, she sheathes her knives and breathes a sigh of relief. Seal Hua then declares that she will not tolerate anyone harming the young lady. Our protagonist is left with his mouth wide open, completely shocked by the scene. Juai explains that Seal Hua is a sword master and can cut through anything. With a nervous smile, our hero realizes he shouldn't mess with her, so he tells them to get back to the house as fast as possible. But on the way, he ends up stepping on another wasp nest by accident. Our boy looks to the side and sees a swarm of hornets coming right at him. He screams in terror and can't believe he found another nest on the same day. The bodyguard Seal Hua gets completely annoyed with the situation. Suddenly, an old lady appears and grabs Seal Hua's shirt from behind. She asks where Mr. Beck's mill is, leaving the bodyguard surprised. Seal Hua says she's not sure, and the old lady holds her hand tightly. She tries to explain that she's in a hurry, but the woman won't let her go. The old lady says it's already late, and she still hasn't found the mill. And if a wild animal shows up, she could pass out from fright in the dark. She cries, saying she's going to join her husband in heaven that day. Guilt then hits Seal Hua hard, and she feels bad for the old lady. Meanwhile, our hero keeps running desperately with Ju Ao on his back. He knows that if he keeps this up, he'll soon be caught by the angry wasps. Suddenly, he remembers a tip from a bee expert. He saw that to get rid of a swarm, you just have to dive into water. Without a second thought, our hero runs towards the nearest stream. Ju asks why he's going that way, but he says there's no time. He then tells her to hold her breath for 30 seconds with him. Our protagonist counts to 3 and dives into the water with the girl. Underwater, he hopes the wasps will give up and go away. But to his despair, the wasps don't leave and just keep waiting. He then realizes it's a temporary solution and that he'll be attacked again. Our protagonist panics because he doesn't know what to do in this situation. Suddenly, Sol Ho appears with the old lady on her back and slices through the hornets. With her swift movements, she clears a path in the water for them to get out. Our hero and Jua can finally breathe, but Seal Hua is furious. She scolds our protagonist for his reckless actions. She also warns him not to do that again when she's not around. The old lady then thanks them and points to the mill she found nearby. Our hero asks if Juai is okay, and she says she just swallowed a little water. But suddenly, a lone wasp appears and flies towards Jua. The two of them are terrified as the wasp is about to sting the girl. The wasp closes in fast and prepares for the final attack. However, our protagonist acts quickly and uses his hand to shield Jua. The little girl calls his name, surprised by his protective move. Our hero screams in pain and says he squashed the wasp with his bare hand. Jua asks if he's okay, but he says he is, despite his injured hand. Suddenly, Seal Ho notices something and draws their attention to a detail. She asks what happened to the basket of vegetables they picked. Our protagonist then remembers that he left the basket behind in the kiosk, and, when they go back, they find a group of wild animals eating everything. Our hero tries to shoo them away, but they aren't intimidated by his yelling. In the end, the animals run off and leave nothing behind in the basket. He then realizes that all their hard work was completely for nothing. Ju stays silent and seems pretty upset about losing the vegetables. Our protagonist feels guilty and apologizes for dropping the basket. But the little girl says it was an accident and they can pick more later. She says she only forgave him because he was brave and protected her. Because a guy who's afraid of spiders caught a wasp to protect her. In exchange for his bravery, Ju then orders our protagonist to carry her on his back on the way home. He complains that he's not a horse, but the girl thinks the view from up there is great. So Hoa says it seems like the young lady has taken a liking to our hero. But Ju replies that he still has a long way to go to be her subordinate. Our protagonist grumbles that he doesn't care, and she pulls his ear hard. Meanwhile, So Ho calls Ju as mother and tells her how the day went. She says the two of them fight a lot, but their relationship isn't bad. However, she decides to warn her about something important she discovered about our hero. It turns out he has a history of disciplinary problems since middle school. Seol-ha then concludes that our protagonist is most likely a delinquent, but Ju-a's mother says it doesn't matter and that they should stay together. She also orders that if anything happens, Seol-ho must take him down on the spot. After hanging up the phone, Ju-a's mother looks at some photos. She realizes that our hero has really changed a lot since an incident in the past. And we see a photo of our protagonist holding a baby with a huge smile. The next day, our hero's grandmother calls everyone for breakfast. She yells for them to hurry up, because the food is already on the table. Our protagonist wakes up with his hair all messy and still sleepy. He complains that it's too early to eat, but his grandmother tells him to knock it off. Ju-a scolds him, saying he can't wake up later than the boss. Suddenly, the little girl bites our hero's arm really hard. The grandfather then yells at them to behave at the table and stop fighting. But suddenly he hears a strange noise coming from outside. The old man gets up and goes to the door to see what's happening. Looking outside, he sees nothing but the gate in the house's garden. However, a small puppy appears at the gate and gets their attention. Everyone gathers at the door to see the little dog and is surprised. Shortly after, they sit around the puppy and watch it fondly. Our hero wonders where it came from and Ju-a thinks it got lost. But the grandfather remembers that the neighbor's dog had puppies recently. Our hero asks what breed the puppy is, but the grandmother says it's just a mutt. The little dog then stumbles and falls right into Ju-a's lap, who is surprised. She tries to push it away, but the puppy already gets comfy and falls fast asleep. The little dog sleeps with its tongue out and looks very comfortable there. Ju-a is completely frozen, her face all red with embarrassment. Seol-hwa says the puppy jumped into her arms, but the girl doesn't know what to do. Our protagonist then tells her not to worry, because it's not going to take her out. With a little hesitation, she starts to pet the puppy's head. The little girl then realizes it's not as bad as she imagined and smiles. Everyone watches the scene and realizes the puppy really likes her. Suddenly, a woman appears at the gate and calls for our hero's grandfather. She asks if they've seen a dog around and spots it right away. The woman thanks Ju-a for taking care of the puppy and picks it up. The grandfather then jokes about the puppy having crawled all the way there on its own. But the woman says they're already running around and will need to be given away soon. Ju-a then gets super excited and says she wants to go see the other puppies. And when they get there, they find a bunch of cute and sleepy little dogs. The neighbor asks if they aren't adorable and Ju-a turns all red. On top of that, the woman explains that they are puppies 1 through 7 from her dog. She then notices that one of them has taken a liking to Ju-a and offers her one to take home. With her eyes sparkling, Ju-a asks her grandfather if she can keep one of the puppies, but he says no right away. The old man refuses to have any animals and says that if she wants one, she should take it to her own house. Our hero then finds his grandfather's attitude strange, as he seems very annoyed by the request. He questions why the old man gave in to everything before but is now acting this way. The neighbor explains that 2 years ago, they had a dog stolen by a merchant, and she says that even today, these thieves show up to steal the dogs in the area. Our protagonist then asks why a dog thief would steal dogs. And he answers his own question. It's probably to sell them to restaurants for meat. With that comment, little Ju-a is completely horrified by the idea. Then Seol-ho lands a hit on our hero and tells him to watch his mouth around a child. He tries to defend himself, saying he didn't mean to scare her, but Ju-a becomes thoughtful. Suddenly, a voice from a megaphone announces that they are buying dogs in the area. The announcement also says they buy black goats and other farm animals. The neighbor then gets terrified and says the devil himself just showed up. One of the puppies starts barking, and Ju-a looks back, completely scared. Ju-a then tries to quiet the puppy and tells it not to make a sound so it won't be heard. However, a man appears at the gate, saying he caught the scent of a dog in the air. On top of that, he brags about having a sharp nose like a hunting dog. With a creepy smile, the guy introduces himself as a dog merchant. The neighbor confronts him immediately and tells him to leave, because she's not selling anything. But the man scoffs and says he just wanted to ask her a simple question. Then he sees Ju-a holding the entire litter and is quite surprised. The guy counts 7 puppies and asks the lady to sell him 1 or 2. However, the little girl yells furiously and says there's no way they're being sold. The man gets annoyed by her attitude and Ju-a tells him to get lost right then. He ignores her and says kids shouldn't meddle in grown-up talk and asks if she's the owner. With a smirk, the merchant realizes she isn't the owner of the dogs. So he shoves her aside and says he's just going to take a quick look. But suddenly, a toy gun is pointed right at his head. And with a serious look, Ju-a declares herself the boss of the puppies and faces him head-on. With a serious look, Ju-a says the puppies are her subordinates and he is not to touch them. The dog merchant stays silent with the toy gun pointed at his head. However, he suddenly starts laughing out loud at the whole situation and at Ju-a. He also makes fun of her and asks if she watches too many dramas or is a gangster's daughter. Seeing he wasn't going to get anywhere, the man decides to leave and says it's useless to stay there. But before leaving, he gives a creepy warning to lock their gates well. The merchant then leaves and wishes them good luck with a sinister smile. Once outside, he complains that he didn't want to have to do this because of a girl. However, with an evil look, he decides that this is the only way to get the dogs. Meanwhile, our protagonist and the rest of the group stand there watching the whole scene. The neighbor is then relieved and says the guy finally left. Suddenly, the mother dog starts barking very loudly and startles everyone. Soon after, she runs over to her puppies to see if they were okay. Ju-ah realizes the dog was scared the man would take her puppies away. Finally, our hero says he's heading inside and tells her to stay if she wants to play more. With a shy smile, Ju asks if she can stay a little longer, and the neighbor says yes. The woman then offers watermelon to the two of them and Seol-hwa accepts right away. She then invites the bodyguard to eat with them and cool off a bit. Seol-hwa then thanks her for the invitation and agrees to join them for a bite. The neighbor comments that she didn't know Ju-ah liked dogs as much as her mother did. Then Seol-hwa explains that's because the little girl once had a dog she loved very much. The woman gets curious and wonders if she had a dog before, because she asks if that means Ju-ah doesn't have a dog anymore. Seol-hwa confirms she doesn't, and the neighbor asks if something bad happened, so the bodyguard leans in to tell her what happened in secret. The scene then cuts to the night with the full moon shining in the sky, and we see our hero's grandfather complaining that his granddaughter is having too much fun. Inside the house, he freaks out because she hasn't come back, and the grandmother tells him to calm down. Our protagonist says it's better if she sleeps over there since the house is quieter. Angrily, the grandfather lands a punch right on our boy's head. The grandfather then scolds our hero for not worrying about his cousin. With a lump on his head, our boy gets up and says he'll go get her. Suddenly, Ju-ah appears at the door with a sour look on her face. Our protagonist comments that she looks mad, and the grandfather glares at her. He then says there's no way they're bringing a dog into the house. The little girl tries to beg to keep one just for one night, but he refuses. Seol-hwa consoles her and tells her to get ready for bed, because summer is tomorrow. Defeated, the little girl agrees and goes with her bodyguard to the room. But suddenly they hear desperate barking coming from outside. Ju-ah looks at the door and realizes something has gone very wrong. The grandfather and the girl run outside to see what caused the noise. When they get outside, they see the dog merchant's truck driving away. The neighbor then yells that the scumbag stole the puppies and ran off. Ju-ah is in shock and can't believe this happened again. Our hero then says they need to catch the guy before he gets away. Our protagonist thinks it's crazy and asks how they're going to catch the guy so late. Ju-ah then yells that he's going to sell the puppies to a meat restaurant. With her eyes full of tears, the little girl says she doesn't know what to do. She then turns to Seol-hwa and suggests they follow him by car right now. But the bodyguard apologizes because her priority is to protect the young lady. Ju-ah insists they go together, but Seol-hwa refuses, afraid she'll get into trouble. The little girl then falls silent with a very annoyed look on her face about this situation. A moment later, she says she'll go after the man by herself and starts running. However, our hero grabs her by the arm and stops her from going any further. He then asks why she cares so much about saving those dogs. Ju-ah reveals that she also had a dog 2 years ago and gets very sad, because her mother gave it to her so she wouldn't feel lonely as an only child. And one day, she took him for a walk behind her mother's back to play. The little girl remembers how happy she was with her little dog back then, but due to a moment of carelessness, she ended up letting go of the leash and lost him forever. With tears in her eyes, the little girl says she never saw her puppy again, and that's why she doesn't want to lose another dog the same way again. Seol-hwa is heartbroken to see the young lady suffering so much. Our hero then gets really annoyed with the situation and thinks it's all such a drag, so he asks to borrow his grandfather's motorcycle for a moment, and the old man is surprised. Our protagonist gets on the bike and says he's going to catch that rotten dog thief. The grandfather freaks out and says he's gone crazy because the guy is like a snake. Our boy yells that it's dangerous for Ju-ah, and that's why he has to go. The little girl is then surprised by her cousin's actions, but our hero tells her not to get the wrong idea about what he's doing, because he's only going because he can't stand to see her crying face anymore. Just like that, the dog merchant and our hero promise they will be back, and with a determined look, our protagonist takes off in pursuit. The rest of the group is left behind, watching our boy ride off. Seol-hwa and the grandfather are worried because they know the situation is dangerous. The grandmother thinks our hero's actions are reckless, but the neighbor defends him. Seol-hwa then stays silent and thinks about what she should do next. Shortly after, she turns to Ju-ah and says they should wait at home, but suddenly she realizes the little girl is no longer by her side. Seol-hwa panics and wonders if the young lady went after him. Meanwhile, our protagonist speeds up the motorcycle on a dark road. He complains that he talked a big game, but now he has no idea how to find the guy. Suddenly, our hero reaches a fork in the road and doesn't know which way to go. Our boy thinks that if he goes back now, it'll be super embarrassing, and he's stuck. But suddenly, Ju-ah shows up and says she put a tracker on one of the puppies. Our protagonist is startled and asks how she got there so fast. The little girl tells him to shut up and go left so they don't lose the guy. She then says she's not the kind of boss who sends her subordinates into danger alone, because a boss and their subordinates should face challenges together. Our hero is surprised and says she talks a good game for a little girl. Our hero then warns her that she'll have to explain everything to Seal Hoa later. Meanwhile, the dog merchant is driving calmly down the road. In the back of the truck, the puppies are trapped in a cage. The man then laughs and remembers warning the woman to lock her gates. But he brags that he's a professional and that nothing can stop him. He's already planning what he's going to eat to celebrate his success. Suddenly, he looks in the rearview mirror and sees our protagonist approaching. With an evil smile, the two of them order the merchant to stop the truck right now. The man gets spooked and swerves the truck hard, trying to knock them off. He then wonders if our hero isn't the same psycho from earlier. The merchant curses him out and asks if he's trying to scare him to an early grave. But suddenly, our boy disappears and the man can't see him in the mirror anymore. However, our protagonist appears inside the truck and says he's taking the dogs back. He then opens the cage with a swift move and grabs the puppies. The merchant gets furious and calls him a cunning brat for breaking into his truck. The merchant then threatens our hero, saying he can't guarantee what will happen to the puppies. On top of that, he pulls out a knife and says he doesn't care if a few of them get a little hurt. Our protagonist gets angry and calls the guy a coward for using the dogs as hostages. But suddenly, Ju appears upside down on the truck's ceiling with her gun. With a perfect shot, she hits the merchant's hand, causing him to drop the knife. The little girl then yells for our hero to make his move, and he's surprised by the plan. So our protagonist takes advantage of the distraction and grabs the cage with the puppies. The merchant still tries to grab the cage back, but our boy is faster. Right after, he jumps out of the truck and tells Ju to get down because he got them. With a victorious smile, the little girl agrees and gets ready to climb down from the roof. However, the merchant grabs her by the arm and stops her from escaping with a furious look. He then calls the two of them a couple of creeps as Ju tries to pull her hand away. The man gets ready to hurt her, but a blade appears at his neck. Because Seal Hwai appears out of nowhere and tells the guy to get his hands off the young lady right now. Finally, she tells them to leave without causing any more trouble and to return the dogs to their owner. The merchant stays silent, thinking this group is a bunch of psychos. Our hero then asks if the puppies are okay and Ju confirms they are. With a smile on her face, the little girl approaches the cage, feeling relieved. Seal Hua thanks our protagonist since they only managed to catch the guy thanks to him. Ju then thanks our hero with a huge smile and says she's happy with his work. A little embarrassed, our boy says it was nothing and that he just felt sorry for the little dogs. He then wonders why he's so happy to be praised by his boss. Suddenly, Seal Hua calls him by his name, and our hero thinks he's about to get chewed out. He tries to explain himself, but the bodyguard says he doesn't need to worry, because she understands everything and will explain the situation to their boss later. However, Seal Hua scolds Ju and warns her not to pull any more crazy stunts. With a sad face, the little girl agrees and promises not to take any more risks. Suddenly, our hero's grandfather appears and calls his name with a serious look. Our protagonist is startled and asks why the old man followed him all the way out there. The grandfather then explains it's because he left in the middle of the night and it was dangerous. The grandfather finally gives in and says Ju can take one of the puppies home because he gives up. The little girl is super happy with the news and agrees to return the rest to the neighbor. She thanks her grandfather a lot, but the old man is already tired and tells everyone to just get inside. And just like that, little Ju finally gets a new subordinate, number 3. The scene then cuts to some time later with Ju starting a fight with a boy. But now we see Ju running with her new puppy, yelling for him to go faster. Our protagonist complains about having to run, but Seal Hua says it's because the boss is running. It turns out Ju liked the puppy so much that she's been walking him for 2 hours already. Our boy then calls out to her and asks if they can go home because it's too hot. However, the little girl stays silent and looks pretty tired from the walk too. In the end, she agrees and says it's time to stop the walk for good. But with an evil smile, she tells them to rest up and then go for another round. The scene then changes to a convenience store where some kids are gathered. One of the boys, named Jin Tae, is opening a pack and the others are rushing him. However, he's shocked because it seems like his friends want him to open another pack. Jin Tae opens the pack, hoping to get a character named Wolf Gando. But to his disappointment, he pulls a duck named Oriring for the 8th time. The boy is completely speechless at his bad luck and gets bummed out right away. His friends then freak out because he pulled the same character again. A girl named Sienna says he's gotten 8 Orirings in a row now. Jin Tae then flips out and curses the product's brand for his constant bad luck. but his friend Junho says he needs more than 8 tries to get lucky. It's explained that the product is from a famous anime for kids called Akamon. The series got so popular that it emptied the bank accounts of many parents. And because of that, many parents avoid the anime's products at all costs. The character Wolfgando is so rare that he even made the news. Jin Tae then complains that he's out of allowance and doesn't know what to do with so much bread. Meanwhile, our hero and his group are watching the kids from the store. Our protagonist then asks Ju if she also likes the anime, but the little girl denies it and says she has no interest in that stuff. But suddenly, upon opening the pack, Ju pulls the character Wolfgando on her first try. Jin Tae is completely shocked and can't believe the girl's luck. Our protagonist then recognizes the figure and says it's super rare. Silho looks it up on her phone and finds out the toy is worth over 500,000 won. Suddenly, Jin Tae approaches and calls Ju pigtails to get her attention. The boy then kneels in front of the girl to get down to her level. The boy asks if she's not interested in the Wolfgando since she doesn't even like the anime. With a smile on his face, he offers his ring in exchange for the rare figure. His friend Junho tries to stop him because he knows the trade isn't fair at all. With a bored look, Ju asks why she should trade with him. Jin Tae stammers but then says his figure is better and rarer. On top of that, he claims that the ring is much harder to get. However, Silho calls him out right away, saying it's a common and boring character. With the truth revealed, Jin Tae is left speechless and completely embarrassed. With a smug smile, Ju says she's decided to get into the anime after all. Jin Tae freaks out and says that Wolfgando is his all-time favorite character. But Ju just gives him a bored look and says she doesn't feel bad for him at all. The boy is in shock at how cold she is and doesn't know what to do. His friend Junho apologizes and tries to drag Jin Tae away from there. But the boy doesn't give up and thinks that if trading didn't work, he decides the only way to get the figure is to steal it from Ju. Silhwa and our hero notice the boy's intention and are immediately on alert. Our protagonist then grabs Jin Tae's hand and stops him from making a move. With a serious look, our hero warns him not to do it. But Jin Tae gets mad and slaps our protagonist's hand away hard. Suddenly, Ju steps up and proposes a bet for the Wolfgando. The other girl finds the idea strange, but the boy seems interested. He says that if he wins, she has to trade the Wolfgando for his ring. But Ju cuts him off and says that if he loses, he becomes her subordinate. With a challenging smile, she asks if he accepts the bet. With a confident smile, Jin Tae accepts the bet and says he's fine with being her subordinate. With her arms crossed, Ju stares him down as he asks what the game is going to be. The boy then gives a sly grin, already thinking about how he's going to beat her. The little girl just says he'll see and leads him somewhere. They then arrive at a playground and Jin Tae announces that the bet will happen right there. Our protagonist is surprised and asks if they're going to play tag. He then tells Ju not to play for too long and goes to rest in the shade. But the little girl comes over and says that the boss is battling another organization. With a mischievous grin, she asks if her subordinate shouldn't be joining her. She then tugs on his pants, trying to convince him to get in on the game. Our hero gets annoyed and says it's a kid's game, so he's not playing. But Ju corrects him, saying it's a dispute between organizations over merchandise. She then asks Jin Tae to confirm, and the boy nervously agrees. Jang Tae says she's weird and that it would be cheating if he joined the game. Jin Tae agrees right away, since an adult playing would give them a huge advantage. Ju then complains that 3 against 1 is a big advantage for their team. Jin Tae thinks for a moment and decides he'll do something about the situation. The boy then agrees to the condition and gets ready for the real game. Suddenly, our protagonist's feet are tied together with a very tight rope. He has no idea what's going on, but Jin Tae explains the reason for it. Since our hero is tall, he restricted his movements to make it fair. Seo Ho also says she'll record everything to ensure a fair verdict. With no other choice, our protagonist agrees to the imposed rules. He then asks what the bet is and complains about his human rights. Jin Tae finally reveals they're going to play the famous game red light, green light. The first rule is that the person who is hit stands with their back turned and shouts the phrase from the game. Meanwhile, the other players have to get closer and freeze when the phrase ends. If anyone is caught moving, they're captured and must wait to be saved by a teammate. However, Jin says they'll be playing in teams and taking turns being it. The team with the most points at the end of the match will be the big winner. Ju agrees to the rules and says she'll be twice since she's the boss. Suddenly, Jin Tae's friend asks if she can play with them too. The boy is surprised but ends up agreeing to her request. He gives her a little pat on the head and tells her to play well during the match. With everything set, the game finally begins, and the tension builds on the playground. The first person to be is Junho, who thinks Jin Tae's naive for believing the girl. Despite that, he knows it's better to win the bet to avoid any problems. Our protagonist thinks about throwing the game but fears Ju's wrath. He then realizes that if he runs at a decent pace, the kids won't be able to catch him. But suddenly our hero taps Junho's shoulder, surprising him. With his feet tied, our boy runs but ends up losing his balance. He then falls to the ground and is caught by Junho with no chance of escape. Jin Tae's team scores the first point and celebrates their small victory. The next one is Ju-ah, who scolds our hero for messing up. She then turns around and starts yelling the game's phrase to continue the match. With a swift move, Jin Tae taps Ju-ah's shoulder, catching her off guard. He then runs away and gets ready to win the bet once and for all. With a confident smile, the boy brags that he's the best at this game. However, he suddenly feels something fall on his head and looks up. A fishing net pins him to the ground and the boy freaks out, not understanding a thing. With the net in her hands, Jua says she got him and her team scores another point. Jin Tae accuses her of cheating for using a tool, but she doesn't care. Despite his protests, Seal avoids the point for lack of sportsmanship. The third person to be is Sana, who starts yelling the game's phrase very nervously. But before she can finish, our hero taps her and catches her by surprise. The girl tries to run after them, but our protagonist is too fast. He reaches the safe zone and says she was too slow to catch him. Jin Tae then scolds his friend for letting him get away. With tears in her eyes, the little girl apologizes for her poor performance. Finally, it's our hero's turn to be, and he promises to win. Our hero then starts his turn and yells the game's phrase very slowly, but before he finishes, Jin Tae taps him and celebrates his early victory. The boy complains that it wasn't fair, but our hero accuses him of tapping first. Then Seol Hwa shows the recording and proves that Jin Tae really did tap first. With the proof in hand, our protagonist makes fun of the boy, who gets furious. With the score at 2-1 for Ju-ah's team, the pressure mounts for Jin Tae. He then gets ready and says he needs to score a point no matter what. Ju-ah tells him to go slow because of the rope, and he agrees with the plan. Our protagonist moves forward, but Jin Tae suddenly yells for everyone to stop. The boy stands still watching the players slowly approach. He then continues to yell the game's phrase, trying to catch someone. Meanwhile, Ju-ah approaches with a determined and very sneaky look. The game's phrase continues to echo through the playground as everyone moves forward. With light steps, the little girl gets closer and closer to her target, and suddenly, she gets him from behind and her team scores another point. Jin Tae has no idea what happened as he suddenly fell flat on his face. Looking up, he sees Ju-ah and realizes she pulled his pants down. The little girl apologizes and says it was an accident, but he doesn't believe her. With his face red with embarrassment, he gets up, furious. The boy accuses her of being a pervert and doing it on purpose. Our hero makes fun of the situation and Seol Hwa agrees it was embarrassing. Suddenly, Jin Tae grabs Ju-ah's hand, catching her off guard. He then holds her and declares himself the winner of that round. With an evil smile, the boy celebrates, but Ju-ah gets annoyed. She says it was an accident and that he took advantage of the situation. The little girl gets angry and calls him a brat for his attitude. The two start to argue, and our hero tries to break them up. After a lot of chaos, they finally calm down and face each other. With a serious look, Ju-ah accepts her defeat and gets ready for the next round. But she warns him that if she loses again, she'll make him work hard as her subordinate. Jin Tae calls her pigtails and tells her to get ready to hand over the figure. With a determined look, the two get ready for the final round of the bet. The boy then scolds Sana, calling her the weak link of the team. With a sad look, the little girl agrees and accepts staying back in the game. Jin Tae then remembers when the other kids used to complain about his sister. They called her slow and frustrating and asked her not to play. Back then, he would tell her to stay on the bench and not join in the games. The little girl was always sad and lonely because of his words. With trembling hands, she would hold her dress and feel left out. Suddenly, Jin Tae remembers everything and goes quiet for a moment. The final round then begins and Ju-ah gets ready to be it. She turns around and starts yelling the game's phrase to continue the match. Jin Tae then fills with determination and promises to win the bet. He watches Ju-ah and waits for the right moment to move forward and get her. The little girl continues to yell the phrase, and the tension builds on the playground. Suddenly, Siana gets him from behind and celebrates her team's victory. Jin Tae is completely shocked and can't believe he was caught. With an evil smile, Ju-ah gets ready for her team's final victory. The little girl then runs to the safe zone and celebrates with her teammate. Jin Tae gets mad and complains that he told her not to rush in the game. He also blames her for being too slow and for messing everything up. Suddenly, the girl stumbles and falls to the ground, unable to get up. Ju-ah then seizes the opportunity and catches her to secure the win. Jin Tae is desperate and can't believe what just happened. Sana declares herself the winner and says from now on, he is her subordinate. The boy freaks out and says that wasn't part of their original plan. But Ju-ah faces him and says what matters is that she caught him in the end. With no way out, Jin Tae is left speechless and completely defeated. He then turns to Sana and blames her for rushing. Furious, the boy yells at her for ruining the whole game. He then says it's her fault he lost the Wolf Gando forever. But Sona defends herself, saying it's because he always ignores her. The little girl says she wants to do well too, but he won't let her. With tears in her eyes, she yells that he always leaves her out of the games. Our hero and Seol-ho watch the fight and realize the situation is serious. The girl says she just wanted to play together, but he always calls her annoying. Angrily, she says that's why he's always getting into trouble. Suddenly, the boy shoves her and pushes her to the ground hard. But Jua acts fast and catches her before she can get hurt. The little girl then confronts him and asks what he thinks he's doing. Jin-tae says she doesn't know anything and that taking care of his sister is a pain. Angrily, he says that if she's clumsy, she should just try to get better. Jua then falls silent and observes the situation with a serious look. She understands that he's upset about losing but shouldn't treat his sister like that. The little girl reminds him that Siona just wanted to play without being ignored. Junho then tries to calm Jin-tae down and tells them to just go home. But the boy gets annoyed and says this whole thing is really boring and tiring. He then decides to go home and doesn't care if his sister comes with him. Desperate, the little girl calls out to him and asks him to wait for her. She tries to catch up to him, but the boy keeps walking without looking back. Suddenly, the girl starts to feel dizzy and can't run anymore. And with a dull thud, she collapses on the ground unconscious. Jin-tae looks back and panics when he sees his sister on the ground. He runs over to her and tries to wake her up, but she doesn't respond. The boy shakes her and asks what's going on, but she's still out cold. Seol-ho approaches and asks to take a look at the girl. Touching her forehead, she realizes the girl has a high fever. The bodyguard then gets worried about the little girl's condition. She says it looks like heat stroke and that they need to take her to the hospital. The scene then cuts to the girl in a hospital bed, recovering. At the hospital, Jin-tae watches his sister, worried about her health. Seol-ho calms him down and says she'll be fine since they got her there quickly. The boy then remembers all the times he was scolded because of her. His mother always blamed him for not taking proper care of his sister like he was supposed to. He would always say he was just playing, but she didn't want to hear excuses. His mother would remind him of his promise to take care of her when they weren't around, and she would question him about what would happen if she passed out again. The boy then reveals that his sister has always been very fragile and sickly, and because of that, he always had to stay by her side, which was really annoying. His friends wouldn't let him play because they said she would get in the way. Angrily, he says he was always really irritated with his sister because of that, but he admits he didn't know how much she wanted to play with him. Our protagonist then stays silent and watches him attentively. Ju then breaks the silence and comments on his sister's performance. She says the girl wasn't flashy, but she tried very hard in the game. Jin-tae then realizes she was just happy that he included her in the game. Our hero says that as an older brother, he's like a boss to her, and that it's the boss's responsibility to embrace their subordinates' mistakes. Ju advises him to acknowledge her effort and try to make up with her. But Jin-tae gets annoyed and tells the little girl to stop meddling in his life. Suddenly, the boy's mother shows up at the hospital and calls his name angrily. She scolds him for letting his sister pass out from heatstroke, and reminds him of his promise to take care of her while they're at work. The boy tries to explain, but his mother doesn't want to hear his excuses. Then Jua and her group stand up to greet Jin-tae's mother. The boy's father asks who they are, and Jua introduces herself as a friend. She explains that she wanted to play with him, and that her passing out was an accident. The little girl says they took her to the hospital as soon as she felt sick. Jin-tae's mother is relieved to hear that her daughter is safe and sound. She then thanks everyone for taking care of her daughter in that moment. Before leaving, Ju-ah turns to Jin-tae's mother with a request. The little girl asks her not to be too hard on the boy at home, because she says he's just a kid, and it's not easy to take care of a sister. Jin-tae is surprised by her words and doesn't know how to react. Suddenly, a nurse announces that the patient is awake and doing well. The boy's father then thanks everyone for taking care of his kids. Seol-ho says it was nothing, because the young lady had a lot of fun with them. Jin-tae approaches Ju-ah and formally introduces himself to her. The little girl also introduces herself and says he ought to know her name. The boy is bummed about losing the wolf Gando, but says they can play again sometime. They then say their goodbyes and each goes their separate way home. Jin-tae's family says goodbye, and Ju-ah waves to them from a distance. But suddenly, the little girl turns back toward them with one last thought. She stares at him with a curious expression, getting ready to say something important. In the car, the boy's mother advises him to be more careful with his sister. Jin-tae's mother then hands him a piece of paper and says it's from the girl. The boy takes the paper, confused, and starts reading the mysterious message. In the note, Ju-ah congratulates him on the match and promises a reward. He then wonders what this reward could be and looks at the paper. When he flips the note over, he finds the wolf Gando figure and is shocked. The boy freaks out with happiness and can't believe his luck. He yells the character's name, and his mother scolds him for making a scene. With tears in his eyes, Jang Tae promises to serve Ju for the rest of his life. The scene then cuts to a man in a luxurious and very dark building. Someone knocks on the door and asks for permission to enter the boss's room. With a smile on his face, the man enters and gets ready to give his report. The boss asks if he's finished the investigation on our hero, and the man confirms that the young lady's new subordinate is Jang Tae-ho. The boss then falls silent and thinks about the information he received. With a serious look, he repeats our protagonist's name out loud. The boss then says a check needs to be done to confirm our hero's identity. With a smile on his face, the man approaches and tries to calm the boss down. He advises him to stop trying to look cool because it doesn't suit him. On top of that, the man calls him the main cause of global warming for wearing a coat. With his face red from embarrassment, the boss says a leader needs to look sloppy. It's revealed that he is Baek Chien Woong, the boss of the White Tiger Gang. His right-hand man, Lee Hyun, then asks what he's going to do about the boy. The boss freaks out and can't believe the young lady appointed a student as her subordinate. Lee Hyun reminds him that the former boss already passed her position on to him. Angrily, Baek corrects him and says she is to be called madamada. He doesn't approve of the decision and wants to confirm if our hero is worthy of the position. Lee Hyun asks how he plans to carry out this mysterious check, and with a determined look, the boss says he's going to follow our hero. With binoculars in hand, the two of them start watching our protagonist from a distance. However, to their surprise, our hero is sleeping peacefully in his bed. The boss is then shocked to realize our hero is just sleeping. He calls him a careless fool for sleeping while the young lady is in danger. But Lee Hyun calms him down and says Seul Hwai is keeping an eye on her the whole time. The boss freaks out and says it doesn't matter because our hero should be on alert. Suddenly, our protagonist leaves the house with Ju, and they notice. The boss then decides to follow them to continue his investigation up close. Lee Hyun warns him they might be recognized, but the boss doesn't care. With a determined look, he gets ready for the spy mission. So the two of them disguise themselves with extravagant clothes and sunglasses. The boss's right-hand man complains that the clothes are too flashy, but Baek tells him to shut up and follow him so they don't lose the pair. From a distance, they hear our protagonist complaining about the intense heat, and also about having to accompany the boss on her daily tasks. The boss gets annoyed and can't believe our hero finds his duty boring. With a serious look, he decides he needs to test our protagonist. Suddenly, a cart full of boxes comes speeding towards them. The boss then yells and challenges our hero to dodge the obstacle. Our protagonist is startled and doesn't know how to react to the surprise attack, but Seul Hwa acts fast and pulls him away from the runaway cart. With a swift move, she saves him from being hit by the boxes. The boss then scolds him and says he needs to dodge better. However, the cart hits a rock and goes flying through the air. The boxes fall, and the man who is pushing it loses control. Seul Ho says that with agility like that, he'll have a hard time being of any help. Our hero gets annoyed and complains that there are a lot of weirdos around. The three of them approach and find the boss on the ground among the boxes. They ask if he's okay, but the man seems pretty banged up. Lee Hyun helps him up, and the boss complains about the boy's luck. With a furious look, he decides he'll use any means necessary to win, and so he continues to follow our hero and try to test him in various ways. But even with banana peels and other traps, nothing works. The boss then realizes he can't fool Seul Hwa no matter what. Angrily, he says he understands why she's the former boss's right-hand woman. Lee Hyun asks if it isn't fine since Seul Hwa is protecting him. With a smug smile, he says the boss is just jealous of the situation. The boss then says the young lady isn't one to complain to Madam Mai, and the fact that she chose her own subordinate means there's something more to it. With a determined look, he says that's what he's trying to find out. So he asks if there isn't a way to mess with our hero. Suddenly, the boss notices something and goes silent for a moment. Peeking over, he sees an argument and thinks a fight is happening. The scene then cuts to our protagonist and his group in a store. Seul Hwa and our hero seem to be arguing about something important. The bodyguard holds out her hand, and our protagonist scratches his head. The boss gets annoyed and can't believe our hero dared to fight with the young lady. The boss then orders Lee Hyun to ask our hero the reason for the fight. Lee Hyun gets confused and asks if he should go dressed like that. With a sparkle in his eye, the boss has a brilliant idea for the disguise. So Lee Hyun dresses up as a street preacher with weird glasses. The boss thinks the disguise is natural, but Lee Hyun just feels more suspicious.